So, I'm gonna try to explain what dampness is. Now, the purposes, I'm no Chinese medicine major at all. It's just a condition that I suffered from when I was maybe about 3, 4, 5 years ago. Dampness is also associated with kapha-dosha, which is Ayurvedic medicine. So, what is dampness? Dampness is basically when you feel sluggish, lazy, lethargic, confused. That's some of the symptoms. Generally, what I was experiencing was I felt stuffy all the time. I felt like I had a rubber band wrapped around my head. I felt like I had like this hat on basically constantly all day, except it was way too tight, like when I got the hat. But yeah, so it felt very uncomfortable. I felt like my body weighed a ton. It just felt very heavy, like my limbs felt heavy, my arms and my legs felt heavy. And it was very uncomfortable. But the key symptoms that I noticed that were really starting to bother me was it just felt so humid all the time. Even if it wasn't really that humid around outside, it was like 50% humidity, I still feel stuffy and congested as if it were. But yeah, there's some of the symptoms you can really associate with it. Some of it really plays in the mind too, because when I had dampness or kapha-dosha, I was extremely complacent and probably the laziest I was in my entire life. That's not something I'm very proud of, but it does go hand in hand with dampness. Dampness in general, the theme of dampness or kapha-dosha is stagnation or just being stuck, like you're not really doing anything. So the way that I was portraying or thinking was physically manifested throughout my body because I wasn't really doing much. So anyways, so here are some of the causes that usually happen. Diet. So if your diet's bad, which we're going to get into because it's a key factor, you cannot talk about dampness without including some parts about diet because it does attribute to it. So diet as in just what you're eating, obviously. Environment. If it's really humid around and you're suffering from, sinus issues and lethargy and some like headaches and stuff, I suggest that you go buy it's a hydrometer. You can buy them at, I have one in the hallway right now, but you can buy them for maybe $5, $6, and it'll tell you what the relative humidity is in your house, and it should be always around like 50 to 60%. Anything more than that, and you have your symptoms, you're going to feel it. It's going to feel very, very uncomfortable. But environment plays a huge factor. Lifestyle. Basically, what are you doing? Are you stuck in a rut? Do you feel like you can't get anywhere? Do you feel like you're just doing the same thing every day? Then yes, that's something that can contribute to, like I said, the body, like how you feel is you attribute to the way how the mind feels. So it starts in the mind and then trickles down to the body. So, anyways, here's the recommended diets for it. These are recommended. I've actually tried all these diets because backstory information about me, I'm a personal trainer. So when people ask me what diets I recommend and whatnot, I never just give them a diet without trying it. Like I always try all the diets for at least a month and see how it is. So I tried all these diets. Now I've tried ketogenesis. Wasn't a big fan of that one, to be honest. I don't think it's very sustainable, but I'm not going to go on a big spiel about that. But I did notice that my feelings of dampness almost completely went away, for the most part. Like it was very minimal. Paleo, that's the one I'm currently on right now. I think it's great. It's again, we're gonna see with these diets is that they're all really low sugar, low carb, and low carb like Atkins diet also helps. And basically, we got a lot of dietary recommendations, but I'm gonna try to wrap it up as quickly as I possibly can. So basically in this diet, you don't want foods that are raw, really, really easy to cook, or not cook, but prepare. And like processed enriched grains, sugars in general. Because the Western outlook of this condition is usually sinus infection. We basically, just having an upper respiratory infection. Because your lungs are greatly impacted when you have dampness. You're going to feel it all in your lungs. You'll feel like you can't really breathe sometimes. So, but sugars and whatnot, what happens is that obviously they help the bacteria within your body multiple at an exponential rate. So the more sugar you have, the more your sinus infection or whatever upper respiratory issues you have, the worse it's going to be. So in order to get rid of that bacterial infection, other than going to your doctor and getting some medicine, which, like I said, I'm not a doctor. I still suggest going to a doctor before doing any of these tips. But it's going to make the infection worse. Having sugar will make the infection worse. Now, another thing I'd recommend is eating smaller meals. So what I mean by smaller meals is try to have it around like 500 calories at a time. Because another like physical manifestation of this condition is being a little overweight. When I was afflicted with this condition, I wasn't really overweight, but it definitely, I've seen people with this condition be very overweight. Usually maybe like 30, 40 pounds overweight. So eat smaller meals, like 400, 500 calories, just make sure it's like really just a hand size, like you can fit in your palm of your hands. Make sure your meals are relatively small. And another dietary condition is try to keep the saturated fats relatively low. There are reasons why you want to keep your saturated fats. I know it's crazy. I just said that keto is an advised diet, and then I tell you to keep your saturated fats low. The reason why I say keep the saturated fats low is because they take a little bit longer to process than unsaturated fats, like vegetable oils and stuff like that. And again, the theme with this condition is stagnation. So basically, we want to get things into the stomach and out of the stomach, not as fast as possible, but in a timely fashion. So if you're eating a lot of heavy foods that just stay in your stomach forever, you're going to feel sluggish all the time. So that's why we want to limit saturated fats just a little bit. Healthy fats are fine, like avocados and just like peanuts, like those are all fine. But just like with the heavy red meats, like fats and those will weigh you down and they will make you feel a little worse. I noticed a lot of improvement when I went vegetarian and I stopped eating a lot of fatty meats. I noticed that my digestion improved quite a bit. I'm not saying that you should go vegetarian, I'm just saying that's what happened for me. And it wasn't bad. Like, I'm still vegetarian to this day. Anyways, so another consideration, because again, this is associated with sinus infection, respiratory infection, is go get allergy tested. Just see what they say. It might be something like really obvious in your environment that you're overlooking that is attributing to this condition, and just get it checked out. Just see what's going on. It turns out that I'm allergic to some kind of mold, and in the house I was currently in, or the house I'm currently in, there was a lot of plants in the house. There was literally 17 different plants, and my house is not huge. So you can see how mold and plants did not really help with my sinus issues whatsoever. And the last thing is, again, I've already talked about lower your humidity. I bought a dehumidifier, but getting the plants outside my house drastically lowered the indoor humidity as well, because those plants, you water them, they're giving out more water because it's evaporating and it's coming through their leaves and whatnot. So by doing that, by taking most of the plants outside, I lowered the indoor humidity by, it was at 74%. I know, it was about to rain in my house. And it went down to 53% just from removing a couple plants. So keep that in mind. Now, exercises. Now, all this stuff is all nice and good. It really is. And I tried a lot of it. I did almost every single thing when I was researching this condition. But what really helped me out is just getting some good old-fashioned cardio in. When I started doing cardio on a regular basis, I started off slow, because I was not in shape, and I was just walking, then running a little bit, and walking, running a bit, and now I just jog about 5 miles a day. Now, because of that, because you have to think of the key instances or the key symptoms of this condition. Basically, it's your lungs. Basically, your lungs are kind of damp, literally dampness. So in order to get all that out, you need to start trying to dry out basically your internals. So in order to do that, you run, you bring in wind or you bring in air, you expel air, and it's increasing circulation, another symptom of this condition. So by just walking and eventually building up the jogging, or just a nice low intensity steady state kind of cardio movement, whatever it is, I highly endorse it. because my symptoms, they were getting slightly better when I was following all this information, but when I started doing cardio on a regular basis, my condition dampness just went away completely, like 100%. I forgot to mention that one of the nastier symptoms of this is phlegm and mucus. I had this every single morning. It's not pretty, it wasn't great, but again, that's really, sinus infection. I don't know how many times I said that a lot, but phlegm and mucus, I had a lot of it. And I noticed that when I was starting my cardio routine with walking and running, I was coughing up quite a bit because a lot of it was stuck in my system. And after a couple of weeks, I noticed that when I was running, I wasn't coughing up anything at all. I was just running. So, like I said, cardio, very, very, very good. Just do it. I would recommend like maybe 3-4 times a week at least when you're starting. If it's just walking a couple miles, it does wonders. Now, another suggestion I would do is muscle groups. You want to work out just in general. Like I said, I'm a personal trainer. I work out on a regular basis. But if you're going to focus on one group with this condition, I would highly suggest doing abs, abdominal work. Cardio, and abs. The reason why is because even according to all the different Eastern medicines, your digestive system is really, really centralized on your stomach, obviously. So the stronger abs are, it usually helps promote easier digestion. Because again, we're trying to get food to digest at a quick enough rate, because that's not what's happening in dampness and kapha. So we're trying to get all that out. We're trying to get our digestive system right again. So I highly suggest doing some abdominal exercises to help your digestive system in any way you possibly can. So to finish this off, now herbs. I'm not a medicine guy. I used to take all the herbs. When I first had this condition, I was reading up all on the internet. I even have a couple books about it. And I was taking like all the herbs. I was eating orange pills. I was taking ginkgo biloba. I was eating all like the most bitter things in the world. And some of it helped, but honestly, none of it really helped until I just got off my ass and went outside and got some exercise. But some of them do help, but again, none of them like helped me to such a degree that I felt my condition was completely cured. None of them was like, oh, I took this and I'm fine now. None of it really worked for me. I think I was lucky enough because I was young enough where I was able to overcome it just because, well, I just had a lot of more, youthful energy and whatnot. But if this condition happened to me in like 20, 30 years from now, I think I would have to go actually see like a Chinese medicine practitioner and maybe have it fixed by acupuncture. Now, as far as herbs though, I can't recommend any of them. I would say bitters, like not actual bitters, but like bitter tasting food in general, because this condition is associated with a sense of the sweet sense of taste. Sweet foods in general, again, come back to not keeping your sugar low, hold in water. Carbs hold in water. They keep it in there. They literally bind to water molecules. So, in order to do that, bitter foods tend to be very astringent. They tend to flush out water, like asparagus, dandelion root, celery, even broccoli to an extent. They just get water out the body as soon as possible. So when I started eating more green vegetables that were a little bit bitter, my condition improved a bit more. And something I also noticed that when I was on keto and paleo and low carb, I was actually supplementing most of my foods in there, because you can't eat that many carbs on a diet. So I was intaking a lot of broccoli and asparagus on that diet, which was again helping getting rid of the condition of dampness. Now that's really it. That's probably the shortest video I could really make. I'm planning on making more videos like this in the future, because this is probably the one I have the most experience with, because I personally experienced it, but I kind of want to cover all of them. And as far as going back to Chinese medicine, this is probably not Chinese medicine, but Ayurvedic medicine and yoga. This is probably associated with the Manipura chakra, basically your solar plexus chakra, your stomach. So if you want to look up on how to balance that chakra, it probably would have a lot of the same advice I just gave you here. Now, that's all I have to say. See you guys around.